Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to yet another exciting episode of TevoraTalks. I am your host, Cash, joined as always by my co-host and partner in cybercrime, Mr. Matt Mosley. How you doing, Matt? Happy International Women's Day.
Yes, happy International Women's Day to all the ladies out there, especially my wife. So
My wife. I don't have a wife, but shout out to my mom. I got sisters, so shout out to them and my girl, of course. But
yeah, I should shout out to my mom too. Without her, I wouldn't be here. Literally.
it's true, literally. I mean, I guess if you put it that way, I'm pretty sure maybe it's like, like the chicken or the egg conversation. I feel like maybe women were here first. It would make more sense.
That's for another podcast.
We'll save that later. But yeah, so okay, exciting episode we want to dive into. This is not news. We're gonna do a nice hacker history, and in today's episode, we're gonna talk about the fascinating history of women in technology, and we're gonna highlight Agnes Meyer Driscoll, who is a woman hacker who made a significant contribution to the field of cryptography, which I love. I love cryptography. I studied cryptography, and yeah, I want to talk about her. I mean, you kind of brought her up, introduced her to me, and I read about her. She seems fascinating. So I want you to take it away. Give us your hacker history, the history expert, Mr. Matt Mosley. Lay it on us.
I'll try my best. Yeah, so Agnes is a pretty impressive woman, for sure. She earned the title of the First Lady of Naval Cryptology after a little bout with a colleague. But she started her career as a teacher, spoke multiple languages. So just honestly, a genius outside of cryptology. Just really impressive human being. Aside from the fact that she was a woman, I mean, we're highlighting that today because it's International Women's Day. But gender aside, just an impressive human being and genius mind behind it all. She was born in 1889 in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. She grew up in a family of academics, so her family was really big on, education and making sure that she always was successful in her studies. I believe her father was a physics professor. Could
Okay.
be wrong on that, but if I remember correctly. But she received a degree in mathematics in 1911 and from the University of Wisconsin. Her love for cryptography led her to the work that eventually led her to the work in the code and cipher division of the U.S. Navy. At that time, women could not be part of the military, so she was a civilian contractor. But she worked during World War I, and she at that time was working on breaking the codes used by the German submarines. Her contributions at that time were pretty significant, and she was awarded the Navy Distinguished Service Medal.
Wow.
Right? That's pretty awesome.
Crazy. Big time.
Especially given the time when women were not as respected as they are now. So that's pretty impressive that the Navy actually gave her that medal. And she must have done some pretty impressive things that are obviously secret still today, I would imagine. But her path to success was not without challenges, obviously, right? She did face discrimination, as most women do, even today. One of her rivals was a colleague, Edward Hebern, I think is how you say his name.
Edward Hebern?
Hebern.
Like burn, like you're going to burn yourself? Hebern?
Hebern. Hebern.
Right.
Hebern. So this guy, they were colleagues at the working in the Navy, and he claimed to have invented an unbreakable code machine, right? And that's a pretty big claim. I mean, even today, when we make algorithms, I think nobody really believes they're unbreakable. They're just good until they are broken, right? Like, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, just recently in the news, I think one of the newest, like quantum cryptology, cryptographic algorithms, was reported to have flaws, right? And that was just the other day I was reading that article. So,
well, I mean, you saw that one episode of Silicon Valley where the AI cracked the Tesla's cryptography. So if that's real, then it must be real, right?
we saw it in a comedy TV show, so it's got to be real.
It's got to be real. No, but yeah,
I,
that's wild.
I don't know,
So I
man.
read,
I've been using Chat GPT. It's pretty sophisticated.
it is pretty. It's pretty up there. That's for sure. But yeah, I
um,
mean, like when you told me about her name, I kind of went online. I read a little bit about her, and it's pretty fascinating. I think she also studied physics, right, as well, and she like pursued other careers in science and whatnot. But
yep,
yeah, it's
exactly.
pretty. I
But she spent most of her career in the Navy. I think, in fact, she spent decades working for the Navy until eventually retiring. So,
Yeah, I feel like somewhere in between, if I read it correctly, she went I'm not sure if it was the same guy that you mentioned, the Hebron fellow, but when he started his company with that cryptography machine, she went and I guess like was working with him or under him, and then to your point, he eventually went belly up because she realized that his machine wasn't that good.
right, she was skeptical from the beginning, and then eventually proved him wrong and showed that it wasn't as secure as he had claimed. So,
But I mean, like, good for her. But at the same time, I think it bit her in the behind also because she was obviously working under him or for him. So I read that after that she went back to the Navy. I don't know. I don't know if
yeah, I'm
that.
not sure. I thought they were working together at the Navy because at that time, that's where she got the title of the First Lady of Naval Cryptology. Was after she had busted that machine. So,
Afterwards, right? Yeah.
yeah,
But I know, I mean, she worked on some other stuff, right? Like aside from World War I, she was active in World War II. She
yeah.
did some breaking of Japanese codes and whatnot, like, and obviously developing new encryption techniques, etc. But
Yeah, exactly. So during World War II, her primary role was finding patterns and trying to break the Japanese naval codes, which included the famous purple cipher. And she eventually was able to crack those codes, and her work helped the U.S. Navy gain critical intelligence, which obviously played a crucial role in several of our naval victories. So, including the Battle of Midway. Pretty awesome.
that is awesome.
My
I kind
grandpa
of
was
want to
on that battle, by the way.
I just want to highlight, maybe for our two listeners, if one of them doesn't know exactly what cryptography is, but the very basics of it is I want to send a message to, like, let's say Matt. Instead of sending the actual message, I kind of code it somehow, right? And I think like the most primitive basic was from the Greek times, Greek Roman Empire of the Rot 3. You've heard of the Rot 3, right? The Rod 3 is pretty much they literally rotated the characters by three spaces. So like A
Oh,
would
I thought that
become
was 13, Rot 13.
no Rod 3. That was like the first version.
Oh, okay. Got it.
So then like A would become D and so forth, so forth. And then Z would wrap around. So Z would become the letter C. So obviously that got decoded. So through the years, more and more advanced algorithms have come into play on how to, you know, encrypt a message. And that's the whole fascinating world of cryptography. I mean, nowadays, obviously, it's significantly more complicated mathematical equations and different things that it kind of goes through, which makes it more challenging for computers. But cryptography itself is pretty insane.
You would think that it's more complicated, or you would hope it would be. I did find a Rot 13 / Caesar cipher during a pen test once. So,
Really?
yeah, this script was on a machine, and it was like a PowerShell script that was used to add the machine to the domain on the domain controller. And it would use domain admin credentials that were coded in the PowerShell script using a Caesar cipher, which is something I always joked about because you learn about it on the CISSP.
Yeah.
And I always said, like, you're never going to find this stuff unless you're in like kids' puzzle books, right? Like nobody uses Rot 13 anymore or anything like that.
Yeah.
And so here
Nobody.
it
Yeah.
is in this PowerShell script, and I did it in my head as to what the password was. And then after that, got domain admin creds. So
Who I like that was their industry. That was their like practice to use that basic of a encryption scheme.
that was
Jeez, man.
it
Come
was
on.
amazing. It was like a white buffalo, man. So that was definitely in the report. And you know who you are, and I hope you've changed your ways.
Yeah,
If you're
watch. They're
listening
like,
to
we're
this.
now on Rot 14.
Yeah. Like, this is
That
Spinal
makes
Tap.
sense.
See, because that's one more.
That's so funny. But back to Agnes. Let's talk about Agnes a little bit more. So
Yeah,
she was,
where were we on Agnes? So she was World War
I
II,
covered
broke the
the
Japanese.
Japanese stuff,
Yep.
and then
Um, Her work was pretty much highly classified. So little was known about her until decades later. In 1974, she was posthumously inducted into the National Security NSA's Hall of Fame, Hall of Honor.
wow.
And in 1999, she was inducted into the National Women's Hall of Fame. So, um, thankfully, she's finally getting the credit that she was due. Unfortunately, she had already passed by the time this had all happened. But I mean, 3 years after her death, she finally got inducted into the NSA's Hall of Honor, and then 18 years later, she gets inducted in the National Women's Hall of Fame. So it's unfortunate, but at least she finally got credit. But Driscoll's contributions to the field of cryptography paved the way for future generations of women in tech. Women like her have made significant contributions to the technology industry, but they've often been overlooked or dismissed due to their gender. And we've seen that before as well in Hidden Figures.
Yes,
That,
absolutely.
right? I mean, that's a movie, but it's based on
True
true
events.
stories, true
Mhm,
events, and
mhm.
I think that one was pretty eye opening for me. The how much the women played into the fact of the uh, space program and all that. So yeah, so we just wanted to bring out women in tech, give a little spotlight on Agnes Meyer Driscoll, and celebrate International Women's Day with a little story about why you should be loud and proud about being a woman. So
100%. 100%. Shout out to Agnes Meyer Driscoll, aka Miss Aggie, aka Madam X. She is our highlight hacker, cracker, cryptographer, number one, the original real deal. So shout out to you, Miss Agnes. Thank you for paving the way for cryptography.
yeah,
And
definitely one of the originals, right?
yeah, she is one. I mean, like what World War One, that's pretty much, I mean, I guess the further you go back, what would it be like Roman Empire?
Right.
Um,
I'm sure
there's
there
a
was like
giant gap in
women
history.
spies and stuff like that. Yeah. Yeah.
But I mean, yeah, so I mean, back in the day, he was doing things on paper and that machine that the what was the guy's name? Heber, whatever.
Edward Hebern.
Hebern, yeah, that guy, his machine was literally like a, cooler, fancy looking typewriter, right? But she was there from the, get go of modern computers, right? So
Yeah, absolutely.
at the very entry level, I mean, like you said, I wish there was a little bit more on what happened when computers came about and her involvement there. I'm pretty sure she had to like have been one of the first people to touch a actual modern, digital computer system and implement some cryptography schemes there for sure. But they don't mention much about her.
Yeah. There's not a whole lot about her. And I think that might be just due to the nature of her work, but um and the fact that it was not only was she a woman whose story was kind of hidden because as we saw in some of the articles we were reading, her bosses took credit for her work a lot, you know. And so I think it still probably requires a little bit more uncovering. So if there's any journalists out there listening, that there is potentially a good story here.
So here I get okay. So I read this line. So apparently she was working for the U.S. Navy until 1949. So that's like when she was just about 70. What is that? 89, 99 plus 49, 60 years old.
Wow.
So maybe she didn't really have too much hands on until onto our modern technology of cryptography, but definitely she probably paved the way a little bit.
Yeah, I think ARPANET didn't come around until 69. So
You just made it. She was almost there. Agnes was almost there.
well, that's ARPANET. I mean, I'm sure there was computers and yeah, there definitely was computers back then, but how much involvement she had, I'm not sure. So
But cool story, man. I'm glad you brought her up. Like I said, I love cryptography. I genuinely enjoy studying that subject a lot. It was very challenging And the stuff I was studying was definitely not like the ultra deep level, you know, it was very surface level. So I can only imagine, you know, these, I always find it fascinating that people that, you know, I take a class, I read a book, and at some point that book did not exist. You know what I'm saying? People came up with these things on their own, just being just geniuses. And I feel like she's one of our geniuses that doesn't get mentioned enough.
Absolutely. Yep.
So again, one more time, shout out to you, Miss Agnes Meyer Driscoll. Thank you for paving the way. Hopefully some of our companies that keep getting hacked and cracked nowadays maybe look into something cryptography related. I don't know, implement some tools. But yeah, it's a good highlight. I think, you know, it's even though it's International Women's Day, I know we have a Women in Tech month, right? When is our Women in Tech month?
I
Is that
think
this?
it's now. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, is it this month? So maybe we'll do like another couple episodes. I wouldn't mind doing it if you're up for it. Let's talk about more women in tech. Hopefully, we can maybe even drag in one of our women in tech at our company, maybe do an interview with them and see how they got their foot in the door. Because we have a lot of sharp women in our company as well. So,
Definitely.
right.
And then we also have an upcoming webinar for those that follow us. If you've heard our episode on ransomware pay or not pay, we'll be doing a webinar with a little bit of Q&A from people, do live interaction. So if you want to join in, we'll provide the link in our post here. And then we will also be at RSA this year. So if you're there, let us know, and
Right around the corner.
yeah, we'll be I don't know, messing around, recording, interviewing, throwing out free stuff.
Free
And then
stuff.
also Net Diligence in Philadelphia in June, end of May. Yeah, end of May, June, first week. So look
Yep.
forward to this there.
A lot of exciting stuff coming up. And as always, please like, subscribe. If you find and figure out a way to get a hold of me and Matt online somehow, I'll leave that up to you. We will guaranteed send you some cool swag, as Matt likes to call it.
Yes,
And
without being creepy, like popping into my DMs or whatever.
yeah, I don't
Cyber
know.
stalking me. All you have to do is send an email. That's all. You're
Yeah,
good.
send an email, find a
I
way.
don't need you showing up at my front door.
Yeah, definitely don't show up at my front door. Find a way to digitally get a hold of us. Digitally. But with that said, that's enough for me for today. Any final words, Mr. Mosley?
Nope, that's it. Thanks again, Agnes Meyer Driscoll, and for all the women out there, happy International Women's Day. For a lot of you, wouldn't be where I am today without you. So thank you.
Thanks again. Till next time.